AITA for asking my cousin to sign a loan contract. I am 28F, and for as long as I can remember, my uncle Raymond has been like a second father to me. He has always shown up for our family, whether it was driving hours to attend birthdays, stepping in to help my parents during rough patches, or just being the person who made everyone laugh at the dinner table. He is the kind of man who would give the shirt off his back if someone needed it. So when my mother called one afternoon and said that Uncle Raymond needed a financial favor, I didn't even think twice. She explained that he had asked if I might be able to lend him £18,000. Without hesitation, I said yes. If he had asked for twice that, I would have at least tried to find a way. That's how much I trusted him. But a few days later, I received a message that left me unsettled. It wasn't from my uncle, but from his younger son, Martin, who is 34. He texted, "Thanks for stepping in. This will make things easier for me." At first, I didn't understand. Why was Martin thanking me for something that was supposed to be for my uncle? I reread the message 3 times, confused. Something about the casual tone rubbed me the wrong way, like he thought I was just expected to help him out. When I asked my mom about it, she said quietly that the loan wasn't actually for Raymond. It was to cover the last installment of a program Martin had signed up for to move abroad. My heart sank. It felt like the ground shifted beneath me. I had pictured my uncle needing this money to cover something urgent, maybe health-related or household expenses. But no, this was for Martin, someone who had never once taken responsibility for his own life. My uncle had already sold some of his belongings to cover earlier payments, but now he was stuck. Since the last property he was trying to sell wasn't moving as quickly as he hoped, he asked me for help to bridge the gap. I felt torn. On one hand, I wanted to stand by my uncle. On the other, I felt uneasy about essentially funding Martin's choices, especially since he has never seemed motivated. He drifts from job to job, always leaning on his father to bail him out. When I brought up repayment, my uncle assured me he'd give me the money back as soon as his property sold. But I wasn't sure anymore. If Martin was the one benefiting, shouldn't Martin also be responsible for the repayment? I thought of asking Martin to sign a formal contract with my uncle as guarantor. My mother, however, frowned at this idea. She told me it would seem cold and transactional, especially since it was family. But to me, it felt like the only way to protect myself. The tension really began when I spoke to Martin directly. I tried to be calm, explaining that I wasn't against helping, but I needed clarity. His response stunned me. He laughed and said, "It's just money. You'll get it back. Why make this complicated?" The way he brushed it off, as if £18,000 was pocket change, made me feel small. I worked hard for my savings. My income isn't even steady. I freelance and travel, so every bit of my savings is precious. Hearing him treat it so casually felt insulting. I confided in my dad, who usually avoids family disputes. He listened quietly, then told me, "Your uncle has a blind spot when it comes to Martin. He wants to believe in him, even when Martin hasn't earned that trust. You need to be careful. Don't let their problems become your problems." His words stayed with me, but my mother saw things differently. She insisted I should just hand over the money because family comes first. We argued about it late one evening, voices raised in a way that rarely happens between us. She accused me of embarrassing her in front of her brother. I snapped back that I wasn't a bank, and that if Martin needed money, he should be the one responsible enough to take on the debt, not me. The fight didn't end there. News of my hesitation spread quickly through the family. My Aunt Clara, Raymond's wife, called me and said, "You know how much your uncle has done for everyone. If you can't trust him, then who can you trust?" She spoke kindly, but with an edge that made me feel guilty. But then, just a day later, my cousin Lydia, the eldest child, phoned me from her city. She told me flat out, "Don't do it without something in writing. Martin still owes me money from years ago. I never saw a single penny back." That confession shocked me. I had no idea she had been through the same thing. The situation kept spiraling. Martin messaged me again, this time less polite. He wrote, "If you're going to make this difficult, maybe just forget it. I thought you cared about Dad." The manipulation was clear. He was trying to frame it as if my refusal to hand him money meant I didn't care about my uncle. I didn't reply. I couldn't. My hands shook as I stared at the screen. Things came to a boiling point when we had a family gathering at my grandparents' house. My uncle thanked me publicly for considering helping, even though I hadn't actually given him the money yet. Everyone at the table turned to look at me. Some smiled approvingly. Others whispered. Martin smirked the entire time, like he had already won. My stomach twisted. That night, my parents and I got into another fight on the drive home. My mom accused me of being heartless. My dad defended me, and I just sat in silence, wishing I had never said yes in the first place. I felt trapped between loyalty and self-respect. 2 weeks later, I still hadn't given them the money. Every time Uncle Raymond or my mother brought it up, I had an excuse ready. I told them I needed to move things around, or that one of my clients was delayed in paying me. But the truth was, I wasn't ready to hand over £18,000 without knowing exactly how this would play out. Something in my gut told me that if I rushed into it, I would regret it. That's when something unexpected happened. My older cousin Lydia, who lives in another city and rarely gets involved in family drama, called me one evening. She almost never calls, so I knew immediately that something was serious. Her tone was calm but direct. She said, "I heard Dad's been asking you for help. Don't let Martin drag you into this." At first, I thought she was just being protective of me, but then she explained further. Years ago, Martin had borrowed a smaller amount from her, nothing close to what he was asking from me, but still a significant sum. He promised he would pay her back within a few months. Instead, he avoided her for almost a year. He ignored her texts, dodged calls, and when she finally confronted him at a family holiday gathering, he had the audacity to say he forgot about it. She never saw the money again. I was stunned. I asked her why she hadn't told me sooner. Lydia sighed and said she had been trying to keep peace in the family. She didn't want to add to the tension between her and her brother, especially since their father, my Uncle Raymond, always defended Martin no matter what. But after hearing that Dad's gone to you now, she said, I couldn't stay quiet. You deserve to know what you're walking into. Her words hit me like a wave. It felt like pieces of a puzzle were finally sliding into place. I realized that my discomfort all along wasn't just about the money. It was about knowing deep down that Martin wasn't trustworthy. The next day, I decided I needed to confront Uncle Raymond directly. I went to his house and sat with him in the kitchen. He poured me tea, like he always does, and I tried to find the right words. I told him gently, Uncle Raymond, I love you, and I want to help. But if this money is for Martin, then I need him to acknowledge that it's his responsibility. I can't hand it over unless he's willing to sign something formal. He put his cup down slowly and sighed. His eyes looked tired, older than I'd ever seen them. Then he said something that sent a chill through me. If you push too hard, he'll just disappear, and then we'll both be left with nothing. I froze. That single sentence confirmed what I had feared all along. Martin wasn't dependable at all. Even his own father, who loved him fiercely, knew that. I could feel my chest tighten. I wanted to help my uncle, but how could I trust Martin when even Raymond was warning me that Martin might vanish if held accountable? I told my uncle, my voice shaking, then you understand why I can't do this without a contract. It's not about trusting you. It's about making sure Martin is responsible. Uncle Raymond's shoulders slumped. He didn't argue, but the disappointment on his face cut me deeply. I could tell he hated being in the middle, hated the idea of me treating his son like someone untrustworthy. But what choice did I have? Later that evening, my mother found out what I had said. She was furious. She called me and accused me of humiliating her brother. How could you speak to him like that? He's family. He's helped you more times than you can count. And now you want to make him sign papers as if he's some stranger off the street. I tried to explain that I wasn't asking Uncle Raymond to sign. It was Martin I wanted to hold accountable. But she didn't want to hear it. She said I was making things harder for everyone, that I was acting cold and ungrateful. Things escalated quickly. The next weekend, we had a small family lunch at my parents' house. My uncle came, so did Aunt Clara, and to my dread, Martin was there too. The atmosphere was tense from the start. My mother kept giving me sharp looks across the table, like she was silently urging me to drop the whole thing. At one point, Martin brought it up himself. He smirked and said, "So, are we doing this or not? Because if it's going to take this long, maybe I should just ask someone else." His tone was mocking, like I was the one being unreasonable. I couldn't hold back anymore. I told him calmly, "If you want the money, you need to take responsibility for it. I'm not giving out £18,000 on a handshake." The room fell silent. My mother's face went red. Aunt Clara gasped and muttered, "Unbelievable." Martin leaned back in his chair and laughed, shaking his head. "This is ridiculous. You act like I'm some scammer off the street. I'm your cousin." That's when my dad, who had been silent up until then, finally spoke. His voice was firm. "You're not a child anymore, Martin. If you're old enough to take money, you're old enough to sign for it." The tension exploded. My mother snapped at my dad for ganging up on family. Aunt Clara accused me of disrespecting my uncle. My uncle tried to calm everyone down, but his voice was drowned out by the shouting. Martin stormed out halfway through the meal, slamming the door behind him. I sat there, shaking, wishing I could disappear. The family that used to feel like my safe place suddenly felt fractured, and I was at the center of it. My mother wouldn't even look at me. My uncle looked defeated. My dad patted my shoulder quietly, as if to remind me he was on my side. And in that moment, I realized something painful. No matter what decision I made, someone in the family would feel betrayed. If I gave the money without conditions, I'd betray myself. If I demanded accountability, I'd betray my mother and uncle. Either way, I was the villain in someone's eyes. But deep down, I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't let Martin's irresponsibility become my burden. A month later, Martin finally called me himself. I remember staring at the screen when his name popped up, debating whether I should answer at all. I picked up, and before I could even greet him, his voice came through sharp and defensive. "I don't get why you're making this so complicated. It's family." No hello, no attempt to soften his tone, just straight into blame. I sat there for a moment, trying to keep my voice even. I told him, as calmly as I could. I'm not against helping, Martin. I've never said no to helping. But this is a lot of money, and I need reassurance that I won't be left in financial trouble. That's why I want an agreement. There was a pause. Then his response cut deep. If you don't trust me, then maybe you shouldn't even call yourself part of this family. It was one of those sentences that sits with you long after the call ends. I had always tried to maintain harmony in the family. I tried to be the one who avoided drama, who smiled at gatherings, who quietly kept the peace. And here he was, turning the situation around to make me feel like I was the disloyal one. It was cruel. It made me question myself, even though I knew in my heart I wasn't being unreasonable. I ended the call telling him I would think about it, but my hands were shaking. After I hung up, I sat in silence for a long time. The weight of his words pressed down on me. That night, I received a long email from Lydia. She must have sensed that something had happened because she wrote, "I need to tell you something before you get blindsided." She explained that after my conversation with Martin, he had already turned to her again, asking for additional money. She had refused him this time. She told him she wasn't willing to go down that road again. His reaction? He accused her of being jealous of his opportunities. When I read that, I felt my stomach churn. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about manipulation. Martin had a pattern. When one person pushed back, he immediately went to someone else. And when that didn't work, he twisted the situation until he could paint himself as the victim. Things escalated even further when my mother found out about these exchanges. Somehow Martin had gotten to her first, framing the story in his own way. She phoned me in tears. Through sobs, she said I was driving a wedge between siblings and making everything worse by refusing to be supportive. "You don't understand how much this hurts your uncle," she said. "He's already been through enough. Why are you adding to his stress? This isn't just about Martin. It's about keeping the family together." Her words twisted the knife. I tried to explain that I wasn't rejecting Uncle Raymond. I was simply protecting myself. But she wouldn't listen. She said I was acting cold, that I was letting money matter more than love. I hung up that call feeling drained, like no matter what I said, it would always come out wrong. Then, that same evening, my father quietly came into my room. He doesn't usually get involved in family disputes. He prefers to stay neutral, let things play out. But this time, he sat beside me and said, "I need you to know something. You're not wrong. Your uncle means well, but he shields Martin too much. He always has. And you're not wrong to set conditions. It doesn't mean you don't love them. It just means you respect yourself." His words were the first time in weeks that I felt truly validated. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't crazy for wanting boundaries. But the drama didn't stop there. A few days later, we had another family gathering, this time at my Aunt Clara's house. I had been dreading it, but I went anyway because I didn't want to give anyone more reason to accuse me of avoiding family. The moment I walked in, I could feel the tension. Martin was sitting in the living room, chatting loudly, trying to act casual. My uncle gave me a small, warm smile, but his eyes looked tired. My mother barely acknowledged me. I knew then that Martin must have painted me as the villain again. During dinner, the topic inevitably came up. Aunt Clara looked at me across the table and said, "I don't understand why this has to be so difficult. Your uncle has always been there for you. Can't you be there for him just this once?" I swallowed hard and tried to explain my side. "I am willing to help. I never said no. But I need Martin to take responsibility. This isn't just about Uncle Raymond. It's Martin who benefits. I can't hand over £18,000 without knowing it won't just disappear." Martin cut in immediately, his voice sharp. "Disappear? What do you think I am? Some kind of thief? You're insulting me in front of my own parents." I stayed calm. "I'm not insulting you. I'm asking for accountability. There's a difference." But he didn't let up. He turned to everyone else at the table. "See, this is what I mean. She thinks she's better than us, sitting there with her conditions and contracts, acting like she's a lawyer or a bank manager. Family doesn't do this to each other." My mother nodded along, her lips pressed tight. Aunt Clara looked at me with disappointment. The only person who spoke up for me was my father. "Family doesn't walk away from responsibility either," he said firmly. "If you want the money, sign for it. It's that simple." The argument exploded from there. My mother snapped at my dad for siding against his own wife's family. Aunt Clara accused me of disrespect. Martin stormed out halfway through dessert, muttering under his breath about how toxic I had become. My uncle sat in silence, rubbing his temples, looking like the weight of the world was on his shoulders. Eventually, the property my uncle was trying to sell finally found a buyer. On paper, this should have been the end of the stress. The money issue was resolved, and no one needed to lean on me anymore. But instead of relief, what I actually felt was this strange cocktail of sadness, anger, and a kind of exhaustion that I can't fully describe. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about trust, about respect, and about how much dysfunction had been revealed in just a few short months. When the family gathered at my aunt's house for a Sunday lunch to celebrate the sale, I walked in with cautious optimism. I thought maybe things would smooth over now that the financial pressure had eased. But the atmosphere was icy from the start. Martin barely looked at me, and when he finally did, it was only to mutter, just loud enough for me to hear, "Good thing I didn't depend on you." My stomach tightened instantly, but I forced myself to stay calm, knowing knowing that if I snapped, it would turn into another explosion. Lunch went on awkwardly, with my uncle trying his best to play the cheerful host. At one point, he stood up and made a toast. He thanked everyone who had supported him through the tough months. And then he looked directly at me and said, even when things were uncertain, she was ready to help. That's what family is about. His words caught me off guard. I hadn't given him the money, but clearly he was trying to show appreciation for my willingness. It softened me for a moment, but then I noticed Martin rolling his eyes dramatically, pushing back his chair and muttering, "Unbelievable," before storming out of the dining room. The table went silent. My mother immediately rushed to smooth things over, saying, "He's just sensitive right now." But Lydia, sitting across from me, gave me a knowing look. She later pulled me aside into the kitchen, away from the noise, and said in a low voice, "He's already talking about some new plans overseas. He says he's found a business partner, but honestly, I think it's the same old cycle all over again. Borrowing, chasing shortcuts, leaving chaos behind." Her words hit me hard. It wasn't just one bad situation, it was a pattern. And suddenly, I realized the real problem wasn't Martin alone. It was the way the family had been covering for him for years. My uncle, out of love, had been enabling him. My mother, desperate to keep peace, was guilt-tripping everyone into silence. Even my aunt, who normally kept out of disputes, suddenly cornered me in the hallway and said sharply, "You could have handled this with more compassion. He's your cousin, not some stranger on the street. You don't turn your back on family." That accusation broke something in me. For weeks, I had been quietly swallowing my frustration, trying not to make things worse. But here I was being painted as the villain while Martin was allowed to sulk, deflect, and create drama without consequence. I finally snapped back at her. Turning my back? I've been the only one willing to actually tell him no. That's not cruelty. That's honesty. Everyone else is too afraid to upset him, and look where that's gotten us. My aunt's face reddened, and she muttered something about young people not understanding loyalty before walking away. The rest of the afternoon disintegrated into small arguments and whispered conversations. My mother scolded me for talking back. My father, in his usual quiet way, just patted my shoulder and whispered, "You're right, but don't expect them to admit it." Lydia hugged me before leaving and whispered, "He'll do this again. Maybe not with you, but with someone else. Don't let them make you feel guilty for seeing the truth." By the end of the day, I felt completely drained. What should have been a moment of closure, my uncle no longer needing my financial help, turned into another battlefield of accusations, defensiveness, and lingering resentment. In the end, I never handed over the money, but the conflict unearthed truths that couldn't be buried again. I realized this wasn't just about a single loan. It was about years of enabling, years of silence, years of pretending Martin was just going through a rough patch, instead of admitting he was unreliable and manipulative. I also realized something about myself. Protecting my boundaries doesn't make me less loyal to family. In fact, it makes me stronger. It means I won't be pulled into patterns that only keep Martin's behavior alive. But as I drove home that evening, a heavy thought stayed with me. Martin won't stop until someone else caves. If not me, if not Lydia, then maybe another cousin, a sibling, or some other relative will find themselves in the same corner I was just in. And the saddest part is, my family will probably keep defending him until they have no energy left. That day taught me that sometimes the hardest part of family isn't the fights themselves. It's watching the people you love enable the very chaos that keeps hurting them. And I left my aunt's house with one lingering question burning in my mind. If no one else draws a line, how many more times will Martin drag us all back into this same mess?
You are definitely not the AITA in this situation, and here's why with a more expansive perspective. First, your instincts and decisions demonstrate clear boundaries, emotional intelligence, and financial prudence. You didn't refuse to help out of spite. You refused to shoulder someone else's repeated irresponsibility. Martin has consistently shown a pattern of avoiding accountability, leaning on family to cover his mistakes, and trying to manipulate perceptions to make others feel guilty. Expecting you to hand over £18,000, your hard-earned money, without any formal guarantee is entirely unreasonable, and you recognize that. Your Uncle Raymond's well-meaning intentions don't erase Martin's history. Even if Raymond is acting from love, enabling Martin over the years has contributed to the very chaos you're being asked to absorb. Your attempt to introduce a contract wasn't a betrayal. It was a rational measure to protect yourself. Contracts in family finances aren't a lack of love. They're a recognition that some people need clear structures to prevent harm. Martin framing your caution as disloyalty is classic manipulation. He's trying to guilt you into erasing boundaries that exist for your protection. Your family's responses show why this issue became so emotionally charged. Your mother, Aunt Clara, and even some extended family are prioritizing appearance and emotional loyalty over practical responsibility. They are essentially telling you that it's better to risk your financial security and personal boundaries than to upset Martin. That mindset keeps enabling patterns alive and ensures that the same chaos will resurface in the future. Meanwhile, your father and cousin Lydia Lydia understand reality, validating your approach. Lydia's account of Martin's previous unpaid debts proves that your unease isn't paranoia. It's grounded in real experiences. You also show maturity in balancing empathy with self-respect. You are willing to support your uncle, who you love deeply, but not at the cost of becoming Martin's unwilling sponsor. This is exactly how responsible adults navigate complicated family dynamics, supporting those who genuinely need help while refusing to subsidize patterns of irresponsibility. The emotional toll of all these arguments, feeling like the villain while maintaining your boundaries, is completely normal, but it doesn't mean your judgment is wrong. In fact, this tension highlights just how dysfunctional enabling behavior can become in families when boundaries aren't enforced. Humorously, if we translate this into everyday life, giving Martin the money without safeguards would be like planting a borrowed money tree in your backyard and expecting it to bear fruit. You're investing in chaos and hoping it turns into cash, which it never will. Your reasoning, your caution, and your insistence on responsibility are not just reasonable, they're necessary. In the end, your choices reflect loyalty, maturity, and foresight, not selfishness. You are protecting your own stability while still respecting the family bonds that matter. Verdict: elaborated. You are not the AITA. Martin, by contrast, exhibits manipulative and irresponsible behavior, and anyone pressuring you to ignore that pattern is enabling him. Your refusal to hand over money without accountability is a responsible act of love for yourself and, indirectly, for your family, because it forces a reality check on a pattern that has persisted far too long. If anything, the drama around this situation is a family problem, not a personal flaw. Before we jump into the next story, don't forget to like and subscribe, and let us know your favorite part in the comments.
Story 2.
AITA for refusing to let my baby's father have full custody while I'm living abroad. I'm 28 and my daughter, Alara, is just 4 months old. Her father, Jordan, and I met during college, but things ended messily before I even became pregnant. He came back into my life late in my pregnancy, saying he wanted to be involved and promising he'd help support us. At first, I believed him. He said he would send money regularly and even insisted he'd move closer so we could try to co-parent. But almost immediately, his words didn't match his actions. He visited for a few days, made grand promises, then disappeared for weeks. When I asked him to send financial support, he accused me of being demanding and stopped answering my calls. Later, he told me he had been struggling mentally and that he had needed time alone. I tried to be understanding, but at the same time, I was exhausted, scared, and struggling to keep myself and Alara safe. Now, months later, he does send some money, far less than he earns, and he's made it very clear he isn't interested in covering what he calls our expenses. He's also lied repeatedly about the steps he's supposedly taken to address his mental health and past addictions. I've heard conflicting stories from friends and family about whether he's actually in treatment or just saying he is. Meanwhile, I can't work because Alara is so young. I'm preparing for a licensing exam that could allow me to provide a more stable future for both of us, but childcare isn't available, and I don't want to risk her safety. His parents have been incredibly kind. They've invited me and Alara to stay with them, offered support, and visited multiple times. But I'm wary. I don't want to put myself in a situation where I'm dependent on someone who has repeatedly abandoned us. The tension with Jordan's family is complicated. His parents, Claire and Henry, are wonderful people. They adore Alara and they genuinely want to help, but there's been constant pressure. Claire called me last week pleading, "You're keeping him from her. He deserves to be a father." Henry's tone was calmer but firm. "We just want what's best for Alara, and she should have both parents." I explained the situation, how Jordan disappears, how he lies, how he refuses to provide proper support, but they just sighed, and I could hear the frustration in their voices. It wasn't that they doubted me, they just couldn't understand why someone would withhold a child from a parent. Then came the arguments. One evening, Claire visited while Jordan was on a call elsewhere. She tried to convince me to let Alara spend more time with him, even hinting at moving temporarily abroad so she could be near her father. I explained that moving could risk custody complications and put Alara in a precarious position. She didn't accept it. Her voice rose. "You can't keep her away forever. You're punishing him for things he hasn't done yet." I tried to stay calm, but my chest tightened, my hands shook. I told her firmly, "I'm not punishing him. I'm protecting my daughter." She looked at me with a mixture of disappointment and disbelief, and I could feel her judging me in that quiet, heavy way that made my stomach drop. Henry intervened, trying to mediate, but it only escalated. He said, "We've seen him try. He wants to be there. You're denying him the chance to prove himself." I said, "I've seen enough. I can't trust him to be consistent. He's left us more times than I can count, and now you're asking me to gamble with her safety? That night, we left with unresolved tension, my heart aching from both guilt and fear. The family drama doesn't stop there. Jordan's sister, Vanessa, has started sending me messages, half covertly criticizing my parenting choices. "You should let him come visit more often," she writes. "He loves her. Why make her choose?" I've tried to ignore her, but each note feels like a knife twisting, a reminder that everyone around us seems to think I'm overreacting, that I'm being unfair. Even some of my own relatives started questioning my choices, worried I'm being too rigid. To make things worse, Jordan occasionally drops in unexpected visits. One evening, he showed up unannounced while Alara was asleep. I wasn't expecting him, and I panicked. He sat in the living room, barely speaking, watching me try to calm our daughter. Then he said, "I just want to be in her life. Why are you making this so hard?" My throat tightened, and I felt a mix of anger and sadness. I explained calmly that his inconsistency makes it impossible for me to feel safe letting him be around her unsupervised. He left after an hour, muttering about how controlling I was. Even though his parents adore Alara, their constant encouragement for me to let him take more responsibility only adds to my stress. I feel trapped between their love for their grandson and my knowledge of the father's unreliability. Every call, every visit, every message reminds me that no matter how well I plan, the situation could spiral out of control if I make one wrong choice. I know that refusing to move abroad or allow him more custody will upset them. I know that they see his love for Alara and think I'm standing in the way. But the thought of being dependent on Jordan, or worse, of him having legal leverage to limit my freedom, is terrifying. The idea that he could suddenly decide to challenge me for custody while I'm overseas keeps me awake at night. I feel guilt constantly, but I also feel an unwavering certainty. Alara's safety and stability must come first. I keep thinking about how much she trusts me, even at this young age. The sound of her laughter, the tiny hands that grip my finger, the way she calms in my arms. It's a fragile world I'm responsible for protecting. I love her fiercely, and every time someone questions my choices, I feel the weight of the world pressing down. But I also remember why I have to stand firm. Even with all the family drama, the pressure, the fights, the guilt, I've decided I can't risk it. I can't gamble with Alara's future, with her safety, with the one thing in my life that matters most. And even though the tension with Jordan's family is painful, even though I feel lonely in this decision, I know deep down that it's the only choice I can make for her and for me. I live with the constant hum of anxiety, the whispered reminders from every side that I'm making enemies, that I'm being unfair, that I'm denying someone a relationship they claim to want. But I can't silence the small voice that says, protect her first. Everything else, even love, even family, even promises, comes second.
You are not the AITA here. From every angle, your decisions show clear, reasonable boundaries and deep care for Alara's well-being. Expecting her father to be consistent, reliable, and truthful before entrusting him with custody is not being controlling, it's being responsible. You are prioritizing safety, stability, and long-term security over guilt, family pressure, or empty promises. His sporadic involvement and history of disappearing, combined with the legal risk of moving abroad, make your caution not only justified but necessary. Family opinions and pressure can feel suffocating, and it's normal to feel torn, but your instincts are sound. Protecting a baby from uncertainty is a form of courage, not selfishness. The fact that you acknowledge the complexity, reflect on your emotions, and weigh risks carefully shows maturity. Humorously speaking, sometimes being the mean one is exactly what keeps everyone else sane, especially the tiny human who depends entirely on you. In short, your caution is smart, your boundaries are healthy, and Alara's safety comes first. No one can argue that you're prioritizing love and protection appropriately. You are definitely not the AITA. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Got a story to share? Drop it in the comments, and let us know which one was your favorite. If you enjoyed this video, you'll definitely want to check out AITA for questioning if my ex's child might be mine. Click here to watch it now.